Hey girls, welcome to the third bonus episode. Man, this is like so much all at once. And I doubt you've probably listened to them back to back, but who knows? Maybe you're taking a super long car ride for the holidays. And so this is just kind of filling the air. But this next episode is probably the scariest one for me to release. It's our Moms and Mentors session. It's been a part of our Simply Beautiful conference for the last few years. And basically, it's a session we set aside just for moms and mentors where I get the chance to sit and talk to them. It's much more casual than our main sessions. There's not like any big worship components. It's like me on a stool or just nothing fancy. This year in particular, I was nervous going in because what I wanted to talk about, as in probably what I had been comfortable talking about, was not what God had me speaking that day. It felt very raw, and I still think I have a little bit of a vulnerability hangover, as Brene Brown so cleverly refers to them as. And I'm too scared to listen back because I feel like if I listen back, I'm not going to release this for you to hear. And so I'm just going to put it out there and pray that God can use it, despite the fact that I felt very much, not just vulnerable, but kind of exposed in that session of talking about a tough season and where I'm at. But I have to say, on the other side of it, those moms and mentors in that room that I got to speak with were incredibly loving and encouraging afterwards. So if you happen to be one of them, thank you for being there and for being such an encouragement. And I'm so grateful. So girls, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this Moms and Mentors session from Simply Beautiful.
Hi, ladies. How are you? It's Moms and Mentors, which is actually one of my favorite parts of the day, truthfully. I think I discovered this 2 years ago when we first tried this. So this is going to be very casual, first of all. And by casual, I mean I filter less with moms. So we'll start with I'm sorry. And we'll just blanket the whole thing. So Simply Beautiful, this is our 5th year 5. And can I just tell you that this conference, from where it began to where it is now, like still just blows my mind. But if you don't know the backstory at all, I'm just going to give you a small piece, which is about 5.5 years ago, I was having coffee with my girl, Kristine. If you were in, for the girl talk, she was the one in the middle that talked about being a superhero warrior. Yes. So Kristine and I have been buds for a while. She actually, how many years did we say? 6 years ago, hired me to come speak at this girls' event at their youth group. And we've just been inseparable ever since. And so we met for coffee on a really regular basis because we were part of this very small club of girls that were youth director. She was a youth director at her church. I was a youth director at my church. And so we just bonded. And we were having coffee one day and we started talking about this. Basically, I used to do a girls' conference when I lived in New Hampshire. It was called Authentic Beauty. And we started it while we were there. We ran it for a while and then we moved away. And then actually all of the leaders of it moved away. And then it ended up kind of just the season ended and it was no more. And now that I was working in youth ministry, I was like, it actually is really sad to me that there's just nothing, there's no like event like that in this area. Like there was Revolve, if you remember that one was around, but like Philadelphia was like the closest that they came to us. And so I was telling Kristine in the coffee shop, and this is really a lesson for those of you who are dreamers like me, to be careful who you dream out loud in front of. Because if you're a dreamer and you dream out loud in front of an executor, now you're committed. And so Kristine and I were sitting and I was like, I've just always thought, like, just when I think about my close circle of friends, like if we just got together, we could do a girls' conference, and we could just get our girls together from our youth groups and gather together. And of course she's like, okay. we're doing it. And so as scary as it was, we decided, okay, let's try this thing. And so the first year, I will never forget, so many special memories. We worked, there was probably a team of 5 of us women. Some we just met when we got together to do this thing. And we laid out a theme, and very honestly, the structure of the day has not changed much at all. Like, we had a big session in the morning, big session in the evening, and we got just a couple of our close friends that come and lead workshops. So like, if we knew I know this person, they could do this. And since I was the youth director at my church, I was like, well, we could do it at my church. I could ask in that way, because we obviously have like a $0 budget. We're just throwing something. So I still remember we're like talking between us, like, okay, I have this many girls in my youth group. You have this many girls in your youth group. So we're like, if we got 100 girls, that would be amazing. Like, between all of our youth groups, if they all came together, got the day off. And so we went about planning for this 100-girl day. We got the caterer, and we're like, we think we're going to have like 100, but it might be less. Like, we're not sure. And then we got cupcakes made. Like, we're doing all of these things you can do when you're planning a smaller event. And the thing I will never forget is, it was the day before the conference. We were all at the church setting up, because year one, the 5 of us were all there was to set up chairs, to set up tables. Like, we were doing everything. We decided to make a balloon wall, which actually has left all of us with a little PTSD. It's like an ongoing team joke. Like, if I never see another balloon again. But we did all of this, and my husband was out of town. But he had been so gracious to set up the registration online, but he was also running it. So, like, we weren't watching any of that. And I looked down at my phone. He's called me, like, multiple times, back to back. And I was like, what is happening? And he's traveling. So as a wife, you're like, are you okay? And so I pick up the phone. He's like, babe, have you checked your email? And I was like, no, I'm inflating a wall. And he's like, you need to check your email. And I went in, and the tickets were just sell it, like registrations. This is the day before. And we went from like, I want to say we had like 70. We thought we were going to hit the 100 mark. It was 250 registrations. And he's like, babe, we can't fit this. Like, you got to shut this thing down. And so we literally had to go on and like shut registration down and send out, like, it's sold out, it's sold out. And then we had to call all the workshop leaders and like, you know how you're going to teach that once? We actually need you to teach it 4 times. Because now we have 250 girls that have to now move between. If anyone was there, I hope you didn't feel the insanity that actually was happening behind the scenes, because we were all like, I don't know how this is going to happen. And then again, I fast forward and here we are, which is absolutely a God thing. And amazing. If you read your booklet, you're already probably wondering, in the booklet there was 2 of you mentioned. Another one of the adventures that has kind of birthed out of this. God's done a lot of things since that one little coffee date. But from that coffee date with Kristine, I came to know Jenn Parker. She was on the team, that very first Simply Beautiful team, and she was another one that we just, you know those people that you don't even have to try to be friends. You're just like, okay, well, we're best friends because it's just going to happen. And so we were just super close, all of the, like, just heart connection. And so we did Simply Beautiful together. That was pretty much our thing every year. Our friendship grew to like Simply Beautiful to I started driving to her house to visit on my Fridays, and we would just pray together and drink coffee. We had that, again, the ministry connection. At this point, Kristine had actually moved away to New York, and Jenn and I were like those. We were both in ministry. Our husbands were in ministry. Our kids were similar ages. You know, that kind of friendship. And so we began to meet, and it was a year ago now. Yeah, last year at Simply Beautiful. I made the second mistake of speaking a dream to an executor. And I said, after the Moms and Mentors, I was like, you know, like I came out of that talk just like beaming. And I was like, if there was a such thing as a job that I could just go and have coffee with women and just hear their stories, I would do that. It's like, I would just go everywhere and just like hear. Because the stories that were coming from these women were absolutely the work that God was doing in their life. Like, it was so encouraging to hear. And so Jenn looked at me and she's like, you need to do a podcast. And I was like, what's a podcast? Because I didn't know. And so she began to kind of weave this like, listen, I listen to podcasts all the time. I love them. Like, you need to do it. I'm going to be totally honest. I said no. I was like, it's not happening. Like, there's no way. First of all, I have no time. So I don't know how this is going to happen. But she kept kind of like pushing it. And then my husband, she got him on board. And he was like, you definitely should do this. He's like, I'll produce it. Like, all you have to do is sit and talk to women and, you know, hear their stories. And I was like, all right, we'll give it a shot. So we decided, let's just sit down, just Jenn and I, in front of a mic and see how it goes. That was never released. So then we went again. But it was a good time. But we sat down and we kind of started with talking to one another. And then we got some of I call them your friends that you can get to do things for you when you're really not a professional. No one else will do it for you. And we're like, do you love me enough to come on my podcast? I've never done this before. It could be really awkward. And so we gathered those women and we began to kind of build this. And Jenn and I were together probably 3 times a week at this point. And we just began to dream and pray and dream and pray. And it, even before it released, began to kind of build this momentum where people were like, okay, we're ready for this. And we had set the date. It was May 1st. And we were pumped. Actually, we had the whole day planned out. It was going to involve seltzer, because we love seltzer. And so much junk food. It's embarrassing. But we had this whole day, and we were going to go on a road trip, because we were going to road trip down to New York, because to celebrate, we were actually going to interview Kristine, the friend I talked about before. That was going to be like our big celebratory trip. And the reason I'm telling you all this story is what I'm going to talk about today is I shared in the story this morning about this journey of Jehoshaphat, and I kind of alluded to the fact that I've been in this season where this is like, a few of you came up and you're like, I needed to hear that today. And I wasn't being snarky. I literally was like, me too. Like, I needed that word today. Is because as I've been studying the story of Jehoshaphat, and it's been like preaching to myself, this idea of coming up against things that just seem so big, that don't make a whole lot of sense, and what it looks like to like resolve to keep going back to God. The week before Hey Girl released, I got a call from Jenn, and she was in the hospital. Her little boy, Charlie, who actually had been born since we started this conference, he was a surprise, because her kids are my kids' age, which my daughter is here as a middle schooler. So she had like 2 bigger ones, and then Charlie came along. They literally call him Sir Charles, because he just is all personality. And he almost became like the Simply Beautiful baby, because she had to bring him, and we would all like love on him. And Charlie had been complaining about some stomach pain. He's 2. He was 2. And so it's a God thing, but she would call it. She was feeling paranoid that day, so she went in and just to get it checked out. And I'll fast forward the story. They discovered that Charlie had a very large tumor in his abdomen. And so Jenn was calling to say, I don't know, like, this is what I know, and we're waiting. Like, we don't know if it's cancerous. We don't. It was one of those moments like, hey, Jehoshaphat, the armies are coming, and they're real big. Like, this is my friend. For me, on a personal side, which felt like a really selfish side in that moment, I was at the end of what had been a 2-year journey with another dear friend whose daughter had been diagnosed with cancer, and she was coming to the end of her fight. And I remember in that moment when Jenn called, just crying before God and being like, God, I can't do this again. Like, I can't. I just got, like, I'm here with Tanya, is my other friend. Like, I'm here with Tanya, and I feel like everything I have is just being present. Like, I can't even fathom how to do this right now. And God just met me in that place. And the one thing that he kept saying over and over is, one, to just give it to him, and that this was going to be his fight. I didn't have to fight this. I didn't have to fix it. Women, we love to fix things. I am notorious for I am a fixer. If you come to me with I'm going through this and I don't know, I'm going to be okay, let's figure it out. I want to fix it. And there was no fixing this. I couldn't figure out how to fix anything. And it was so frustrating. And it was this place where I just had to be. And as I described the story of Jehoshaphat, to be honest, that waiting, that has felt like the last 12 months. I feel like I've been sitting in the waiting. And from walking with my friend and waiting, God, are you going to heal her daughter? Or are you going to take her to be with you? Healing either way, right? But what's going to happen? And we journeyed through that. And then with Jenn, we're waiting for this news on Charlie. And so I went to the hospital, spent some time with them while we waited for everything to come back. May 1st comes along, which is the launch, and that was the day that I got the text message from Tanya. I'd just gotten back from Charlie's hospital, and the text came in that I think she's ready to go. I'm at Boston Children's, and I think we're at the end. Can you come? And I jumped in the car and just legally flew. No, I didn't. I was speeding all the way to Boston Children's and began another journey of waiting with Tanya and learned a really difficult lesson about how hard death can be. It's not like the movies where you're they're passing and then they're gone in 10 minutes. This was about 30 days of kind of this journey of KK going home to be with the Lord. And it was hard. Harder probably than anything I faced. There were days when I was going back and forth between Jenn and Tanya and just wrestling with God. And honestly, one of the things I didn't share with the girls, because I knew I probably couldn't hold it together to share this story, scare half those middle school girls, is I don't feel like I waited well, and I don't feel like I wait well now. One of the things that we do, the reason this is called the Hey Girl Real Talk, is on our podcast we have a few episodes that we call Real Talk. And they actually were never part of the plan, but when everything happened that we didn't plan for, we felt like we had to set aside an episode to kind of explain what was going on. And so they just kind of outburst this thing we never planned for called Real Talk. And what Real Talk means is putting everything aside. We're basically not going to try and impress you. We might not even say the right thing. We're just going to say what is real and what is raw and what is right in front of us. And we're going to speak truth over it. And we may ugly cry through the whole thing. We may laugh halfway through. That was one of our things, is how joy and suffering can co-mingle and how that's such a strange journey to walk on. And so as I was preparing for this talk today, I had this whole other thing planned when Jenn, I think on Monday we decided that Jenn wasn't going to be able to come today. Charlie's still in the midst of chemotherapy, and so his immune system obviously is very low, so this would not be a good environment for him. And so she's at home very much praying over this. But as I basically tried to just plan this other thing a couple of days ago, and I actually kept telling one of my friends, can you just pray? This is the only session, I don't really sense that same peace that, this is what God has, but, I don't know what he has. And what God came back to me with was, if this is real talk, then I need to actually have real talk. And real talk for me is that God's called me to do this conference today and given me these messages to teach, and I'm standing up there being I'm the worst at this. I feel that, I am the worst of sinners. You know that moment where you're of all people that should not be giving this message, I am that person right now. But I say that not to be this Debbie Downer, but sometimes I thought about as women, I don't think we necessarily wait well even together. One of the things that we wrestle with is how to come alongside each other in the suffering, in the hard things, without trying to fix it and make it better. we get on men for this all the time, right? But we are literally just as bad. Like, we come in and we're like, don't worry, God's going to, and it's all like good things that we're saying, like, God's going to make it better. He'll work everything out together for good. All of these things, because we're so uncomfortable with just being. Like, for it to be okay to not be okay. Not just for me, but that I can be with you and say, it's okay that you're not okay. It's okay. And that's been this entire year. And I'm very blessed to have people in my life that I feel like have really loved me in the midst of my own mess. But as much as I began this podcast and did all these real talks, I have all people struggle with real talk. Because as someone who wrestles, like, goes on platform and, like, I'm a very animated, dramatic, I joked about not being dramatic. I'm totally dramatic. And I have been my whole life, animated and loud, and, like, so there's people have that, like, persona of, like, who you are, and they're like, and then that God created that, and that's true of me, but that what's also true of me is that I suffer with really dark depression and anxiety, and that's true of me too. And what does that look like to be real with women on both of those? Like, when I smile, I'm not faking it. Like, God really has given me this joy, but it's also true that I really, really wrestle with hard days. Some days it's hard to get out of bed. Some days that faith, like, I feel like my faith is maybe smaller than the mustard seed. And this whole story of Jehoshaphat is the story that I have to preach to myself again and again. Is, God, this feels hopeless, but I'm resolving. And it's not just that one, it's like again and again, God, I give it to you. Even when I can't see what you're doing. I feel like a lot of times in life, the older we get, I was talking to some teen girls about this the other day, and they were saying, I face hard times, but I realize when I look back that everything that I've gone through is hard, that I can see what God has done. Like, I can see and it was this really special moment, but leave it to me to ruin it. And they were just like, and it's this beautiful thing. And I was like, you know what? That's absolutely true. Like, God is a redemptive God. Is he not? I said, but I need to tell you, because these are younger girls, I'm like, as you get older, I don't want you to get caught off guard when God doesn't redeem things in the here and now. When your journey brings you into things that you don't get to look back on and say, oh yeah. When there are things in this life that the only thing that you can place on, the faith that you put in it, is that God's promised in eternity that he will redeem everything. I had a friend once that just referred to it as the box that they go in heaven, the one that you bring before God, like, oh, and these, could we just go through these? They were a little confusing in the moment, like the things you have no answer for, and so when something would happen, they'd be like, put it in the box. I'll talk to him later, it's probably not going to happen here. And this story, this journey for me, as I've thought about, like, obviously my friend's daughter did go to be with the Lord. And there is rejoicing in the fact that she's with Jesus. It is awful that she's not here with us anymore. It is horrible to watch your friend go through that and to lose a child. As a mom, you're a mom in this room, you know that, like, gut feel, like, no, you never want to go through that. That understanding why God wrote it that way, to be honest, I don't think I'm going to know that until eternity. Like, right now, I'm like, okay, I'm going to choose to trust that you're still a good God. I would have written that differently, but I'm not the author of life. Thank the Lord. Sometimes in the moment, God asks us to wait, and we want the answer so bad, and it's not the time. I'm in this transition right now in my life that I did not necessarily foresee coming, which is God began to press on my heart about a year ago that he was doing a new thing. It was that passage of scripture, where he talks about, watch, behold, I'm doing a new thing. And if I'm being 100% honest, I knew when he started saying it what he was saying, but I didn't want it to be what he was saying. And so I began to converse with God. And it was this, because I like to try and negotiate with God. Not recommended. But I knew that God was saying, it's time to step out of your role. That this job that you love, that you've been in for all these years, that just all of it, the security of it, the safety of it, everything, I'm calling you to step out. And at first I didn't want to hear. The second one was, I was like, when it became, I'm like, okay, I know what he's saying. I went to my husband. You should do that when you're married, before you quit. I went to my husband and I was like, so babe, this is what I think God is saying. And I just want you to know, I'm all about myth busting. The whole idea that just because two believers are married means that you will live in sanctimonious harmony and always hear the same thing is a load of poo-poo. Because as I went to my husband and was like, babe, this is what I think the Lord is saying, he looked back at me just as seriously. He's like, I don't think you're hearing God. And he wasn't being like, he honestly wasn't even making a joke. He's like, no. He's like, babe, think about it. Like, it's not logical. Like, we cannot, if you leave your job, what are we going to do? Like, you have to understand the complexity of our life would probably make this make more sense. But like, we live in this house that my in-laws live with us, that they count on us to pay the mortgage so that they can live here, and we're caring for them. And we live in the community where our churches, our kids are all tied in, like all of these things. And he's like, you can't just pull the plug on that. And to be honest, because I already was like, God, I don't want to do this. I was like, see, Andy said so. We're not doing it. And I literally like backed out. I was like, you're right. It's crazy. What was I thinking? Like, we can't pull the plug. It's dumb. It's irresponsible. And so I began to like, nope, I'm in this. And God does what God does, but ever so graciously, just like, Bethany, you know what I've said. You know. And it was amazing from the moment that I knew to more recently, how much this job that I love, all of a sudden, I could feel, it was almost like physically feel him pulling up roots of things. And just like gently for me, like, okay, I'm doing a new thing. And I want you to come with me. But you're going to have to put your fear, or bring your fear, but you're going to have to put your trust in me. And the scariest part of what he had to say was, the new thing I'm doing, I'm not going to show you yet. I need you to let go and not know. And it was a really hard moment. The moment that I went before God, I remember there were a lot of tears. And my husband was still not on board. But God was so, like, being in his word, it's hard to ignore him. And he had just been so clear. From this moment, Bethany, if you choose to say, you know you're disobeying. You know. And now it's your choice. Like, I've been clear. It's your time. You need to make a decision. And I remember thinking, like, the only thing scarier than not knowing what's ahead is not following Jesus. And I remember going back to my husband and being like, no, babe, really, like, God has said it. You want to know real talk? He said, no, he hasn't. And that was hard, because I grew up in a home where we honor and submit and all of the words we hate. But this is what if my husband, he's the head of the household, like, God, how am I? And we had this conversation, and real talk, like, couldn't come to a conclusion. Like, it was like, I was like, babe, I don't know what to tell you. And he's like, just tell me what it is you want to do and I will get on board. And I'm like, I don't know. And I was like, and I know that sounds terrible. And I was like, the only thing I know is that God's saying do it. I wish he would tell me the next thing and I could sound oh so holy and eloquent instead of oh so irresponsible and lazy. But this is what he's called me to do. And it got to the point that we decided we need to go see a counselor. Like we're at odds here. But I was so like, I want to respect and honor my husband, but God, the most important thing is I have to obey you. And God, you want to talk about a Jehoshaphat moment? I was more on my knees in those couple of months when there was turmoil in my marriage. If you've been there, you know this, where I'm just like, God, I can't change his heart and I can't show him what you've showed me. Like, you have to do that. And God, again, just wait. I'm doing a new thing. And I waited. I wasn't very good at it. It ripped me apart. But it was this moment of like, God, please, just show him. And then 2 counseling sessions later, all of a sudden, this stuff started coming to the surface. Stuff that wouldn't necessarily have ever come out. And there was this incredible healing. This incredible, like, God was like, I'm not only going to show him, I'm going to take your marriage from here and bring it over here in the process of all of this. I'm going to do a work here of things you didn't even know you needed to work on. And he did. And there was this moment, I still remember when Andy looked at me. I'm telling you, I had cried so many tears by this point. And he was like, I just want you to know that I'm really proud of you. He's like, I'm proud of you that you were so committed to what God had said, that you never backed down. He's like, but you weren't disrespectful, but you never backed down. He's like, you just, until my heart softened. And it was this beautiful moment. To be honest, he had never been so hot as he was in that moment. I was like, I don't know if you're just using this. Well played. And it was this incredible, God spoke into this, and it was like, okay, we're doing this. And I know that sounds like the main point of my message, but really you want to know what I brought you here to Real Talk say? After all of that, everything that God did, we met with the elders of our church. We had to go through the process of announcing and telling and the emotion of all of that. And we get to the other side, which was only a few weeks ago. And can I just tell you, it was in that moment, of all moments, that I just felt like my faith dropped. Which makes no sense. Because of all, like, God had just done this great thing. And then I get to the other side of it, and I panicked. I flat panicked. And for me, what that looks like, Kristine and I'm an emotional eater, so that looks like as much food as I can have. Give me the food. Okay? So there was the food, but then I was like, I can't do this. Emotional eating is bad. And I was like, I have to, in my mind, I'm like, I have to bring this to God. This is silly. But then it was this, okay, God, I trust you, but I have to be responsible. And so I'm going to have to start applying for jobs. I can't just sit here and do nothing. It's irresponsible. And as God is literally saying, just wait. I'm applying for 25 and wondering why every job I'm applying for, my anxiety is rising and rising and rising. And I'm like, why am I freaking out over this? And God is just ever patient. I'm doing a new thing. I need you to wait. This is not your fight. Meanwhile, preparing to come speak today about the story of Jehoshaphat. Truthfully, it was only about a week ago that I felt like God broke through. And it was actually as I was studying and typing out my notes that something, I don't know if you've had those moments, you've read the same thing over and over, but God just somehow penetrates through your stubbornness and your idiocy, maybe it's just my idiocy, and his word just hits. And I just felt this incredible, you got this. I don't need to fight this battle. I don't even need to totally know what's going on. I don't need this great amount of faith. I just need to put my trust in you and be willing to wait. I really wanted to show up today with the story of, and then Friday night, God revealed. That didn't play out. Actually, what God really brought me here is to stand before you and say, I'm still waiting. Tomorrow, I get to go to my church and have a farewell celebration as my job comes to an end. I have 2 children, both in middle school, who every single day ask me, what are we doing? And I want so badly to have an answer for them. Truthfully, it's for me, but I like to make it seem like I'm really loving. So I tell God, it's for the children. But all I keep saying to them is, I don't know, but I know that God's got it. And the thing that we want more than anything in this, more than all of our dreams and our hopes and our visions, because we're all big dreamers, is we want what God wants. And here's the thing that I know. I know that a year ago, God began to speak to my heart. I know that he led me each step of the way up into this point. I know that he intervened in really difficult conversations in my marriage and in my family. And I know that he's a God that doesn't take me that far and then walk away. I know that he's still here. And that the waiting is only going to be as long as it absolutely has to be for him to accomplish his will, for his glory. And I also know, and I hate, that it's probably not going to be what I want in my time. That it might be actually really hard. In that today I may say this really message to you and talk about scripture, and then tomorrow might be back online. I need to apply for a job, okay? And then we're going to cycle over. I don't know. The only thing I know is where I'm at today, and I'm in this place of waiting. And the reason that I share this and I tell you a little bit of the story of Jenn, who did want to be here today, is I don't know how many of you find yourself in that place as well. That awkward middle where you're waiting for something and God just hasn't shown you. And maybe you wrestle like I do, and you've taken the step of faith, but then you quickly grab the reins, like, okay, now let's manage this. And God's like, no, trust me. I joked about, well, I didn't really joke about it. I still think it's very applicable, the trust fall thing. But I literally keep thinking about that because I'm like, I so want to just sit. It's in me to be like, I don't want to hit the ground. There's just too much at stake. I don't want to lose all of this. My kids, my husband, my fluffy dog, Fenway. God, there's a lot at stake here. And at the risk of sounding crude, but seriously, in my mind, I'm like, squeeze your cheeks, lady. Just believe. It's good. He's going to catch you. You just have to trust him. I was reading this passage. I actually wanted to share it with you as we get ready to close. But it's in 2 Corinthians. It's a passage I come back to again and again and again. Because as I said to those teen girls, and what is true of things in my life and probably things that are true in your life, are as we're waiting and as we're trusting in God, there is also this kind of reality that at this age we know that there's going to be things that we're going to see God answer here. And we're going to see the process, and it's going to be amazing. We're going to be able to be like, I see that he did that, and he did that, and he did that, and he did that. And then there's going to be things that we may feel like we're waiting forever. And that the redemption and that the clarity doesn't come until eternity. I hope that's not true of my job hunt. We'll see what God decides. But 2 Corinthians, it says this, now we have this treasure in clay jars, so that this extraordinary power may be from God and not from us. We are pressured in every way, but not crushed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. We are persecuted, but we're not abandoned. We are struck down, but we're not destroyed. In verse 16, it begins to say, therefore, we do not give up. Even though our outer person is being destroyed, our inner person is being renewed day by day. For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. So we do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. I wonder, ladies, today as we wait, whatever it is that we're waiting for, if we can remember this passage and remember to take the time to focus not on the things that we can see, or in the case of waiting, the things we can't see and want to see, but in those things we know we can't see, but we know God is doing. God, you're doing a mighty work, and you're faithful, and you didn't lead me this far just to walk away. Let's pray. God, I thank you again for your word. I thank you for these moms, these mentors in this room, just the relationship and the influence that you have given them in the lives of these girls. I pray for the girls as they're out doing different labs and workshops and hearing different teachers, God, share the truth of your word. I pray that you would continue to draw these girls to yourself. Lord, I am ever grateful that we don't have to get all of our stuff together to come to you. God, that we can come as we are. God, that you meet us where we're at. That, God, it is okay to not be okay, even if it's not okay to stay there. God, that you want to sit with us, you want to wait with us, and God, you will go with us when you lead us forward. God, I'm grateful for your faithfulness, for your grace and your love. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.